Welcome back to MHS Midnight Horror Stories. I know that many of you come to these videos as a gentle way to unwind before drifting off to sleep. So, before you close your eyes tonight, could I ask you for one small favor? Just leave me a quick interaction, a comment, a like, or maybe share where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Little actions like that help YouTube recognize the content and spread it to more people who might enjoy it. My current goal is to reach around 300 likes within the first 24 hours. Now then, let's step into tonight's chilling stories together. I still can't forget that smell, even though it's been 10 years. Every time October comes, when the yellow leaves begin to fall and the air smells like smoke from burning leaves, I remember that trip. It was a trip that was supposed to be a normal Halloween memory but became the worst nightmare of my childhood. When I was 10 years old, my family and I were driving from Savannah, Georgia to Charlotte, North Carolina to visit my Aunt Beth and Uncle Mike. My mom had planned this trip a month in advance, excited to celebrate Halloween with our cousins. My dad wasn't too thrilled with long car rides, but he still drove from 5 a.m. so we could get there before lunch. The road stretched through the mountains, which were beautiful in the fall. The bright red maple trees, golden oak trees, and green pine trees created a perfect natural painting. Sometimes, I even saw white-tailed deer jumping through the grass along the roadside, and I pressed my face against the window, watching them with delight. About 3 hours into the drive, near the South Carolina border, I saw a large orange wooden sign that read, "Pumpkin Patch, pick your own." As a 10-year-old excited for Halloween, I immediately begged my parents to stop so I could choose a pumpkin. I saw my dad frown because he wanted to get there early, but my mom put her hand on his shoulder and said we needed a break anyway. My dad slowly drove toward the pumpkin patch. I put my hand on the door handle, ready to open it as soon as he turned off the car. When we stepped out of the car, a strong, foul odor immediately hit us. Pumpkins were scattered all over the field, but most of them were rotten. They were a dark brown color, some cracked open to reveal black insides with flies buzzing all over them. But the overwhelming smell in the air wasn't from rotting vegetables. It was strong and unpleasant, like old meat, making me want to turn around and run immediately. But what scared me the most was the dead crows lying everywhere. I couldn't understand what was happening. My mom covered her nose and said in a shaky voice that we should leave. But before we could get back to the car, my dad started to cough. At first, it was just light coughing, but it quickly turned into uncontrollable choking coughs. He pressed his hand to his chest, his face red, and said with difficulty that his head felt numb. My mom and I quickly helped him sit down. Just a few minutes later, my mom started having similar symptoms. She coughed and said her throat felt like it was burning. I stood there, terrified, watching my parents' faces contort in front of me. Their eyes were wide, their faces bright red. Their fingers were shaking and curling up. Then they started throwing up a thick yellow liquid that smelled sour. The strange thing was that I didn't feel anything at all. I stood in the middle of that horrifying scene, surrounded by the foul smell, but my body felt completely normal. My dad struggled to stand up, his face pale, and stumbled toward the car. My mom held onto his shoulder to support him. I ran after them, not daring to look back at the pumpkin field filled with dead crows. When we got in the car, my dad had a hard time starting it. We slowly drove away from the field. Strangely, just about a mile after we left the farm, my parents' symptoms began to subside. Their skin color slowly returned to normal. My dad mumbled, "What the heck was that?" as he wiped sweat from his forehead. We didn't say anything for the rest of the trip. When we got to my Aunt Beth's house, we told them the story. They listened with serious faces. My Uncle Mike said slowly that he had lived there for 20 years, but had never heard of a pumpkin farm on that road. My cousin looked at us with a scared expression and said that maybe it was something not of this world. The next day, my dad decided to drive back to check it out. But when we got to the exact spot where we had stopped yesterday, there was only an empty field. There was no sign, no shack, no pumpkins, just green grass and a few wildflowers. Now that I'm 20, I still can't explain what happened that day. I've looked up everything about chemical poisoning on farms, poisonous mushrooms, and gas leaks. Nothing fits what we went through. The only thing I'm sure of is that something not of this world happened in that pumpkin field, and the reason why I wasn't affected while my parents were is still a mystery that keeps me up at night. Every Halloween, I remember that foul smell, the dead crows, and the feeling of panic as I watched my parents suffer without understanding why. My name is Billy. I live with my parents in a small town in Ohio. My family has a tradition of going to a pumpkin patch every fall, and it was always the moment I looked forward to the most all year. 9 years ago, around Halloween, I was 12 years old. My family visited a small pumpkin patch just outside of town. The farm wasn't big, just a few acres with rows of pumpkins, a small shed, and a few old tractors. The pumpkins there were always big, round, and bright orange. My family would go to pumpkin patches like this and handpick the best ones for carving and decorating for Halloween. That year, I saw a big, round pumpkin with a smooth surface, but I didn't get it right away. I went to look at more. In the end, I still chose the first pumpkin I saw. My parents were still picking theirs while I had mine. I rolled it over to the cart. I started to imagine the creepy face I would carve into it, glowing in the Halloween night. When we had all picked our pumpkins, my parents paid, loaded them into the car, and we drove home. When we got home, my mom laid out some old newspapers on the kitchen table and went to get the knife and carving kit. The smell of pumpkin filled the air as my dad started carving his. My mom started gutting hers. I was focused on my pumpkin, eager to begin. I grabbed my knife and started carving the top of the pumpkin like I always did, right around the stem, so I could lift the lid off. Except something strange happened. It was like the top had already been cut and then glued back on. I was confused. I pulled hard on the stem. To my surprise, the top of the pumpkin came right off, as if it had been sealed shut. A rotten smell immediately hit me, and I gagged. My mom noticed my reaction and asked what was wrong. I looked inside the pumpkin, expecting to see some rotten seeds or maybe mold. But what I saw wasn't that simple. Inside the pumpkin, there was something that didn't belong there. It was a hand. At first, I thought it was a joke. Someone had put a fake hand inside for a Halloween scare. Also, the hand looked fake. It looked like a toy you would buy at a dollar store. I gently poked it with the knife. It was soft and felt pretty heavy. My mom came over to see what was going on. The moment she looked inside, she screamed. A real terrified scream. My dad ran over, grabbed the pumpkin, and looked inside. His face turned pale. "Get out of here!" "Go outside right now," he said. I didn't dare to argue. I went straight out the back door and sat on the porch. My mind was spinning. My dad called the police. Within half an hour, the house was full of detectives, police officers, and even a forensic team. They blocked off the kitchen and started taking pictures and fingerprints. I remember watching them from the window. Their faces were serious as they handled the pumpkin as if it were a crime scene. It turned out that the hand inside wasn't fake. It was a real human hand. It had been decomposed and was severed at the wrist. No one knew how long it had been there. The police asked us a million questions. Where did we get the pumpkin? Did we notice anything strange at the farm? Who else touched it? They went back to the pumpkin patch and talked to everyone who worked there. But the worst part was that no one could explain how the hand ended up in the pumpkin. They couldn't identify whose hand it was. No missing person matched it, and no fingerprints came up in their system. The police had a theory that it might be gang-related, maybe a sick message or some kind of ritual, but it was all just speculation. The case went cold and then slowly died down. But for me, that trip to the pumpkin patch ruined Halloween for a long time. Since then, just seeing a pumpkin makes me sick. We never went back to that farm. My parents tried to act like it was just an accident, but I know it left a deep mark on them, just like it haunts me. My mom couldn't stop thinking about how close that hand was to her and me. Sometimes I still think about it, especially when Halloween comes around. When I stand among the pumpkins at the store, I get a shiver. I can even still smell that rotten smell. Since that day, I haven't been able to carve a pumpkin. I just can't do it. I only paint them. My name is Olivia, and this story happened when I was 8 years old. It was a fall day in the small town of Millfield, Ohio. This was my mom's hometown. She wanted to take me there to bring back some of her childhood memories. The festival was called Ben's Pumpkin Patch, even though I never knew who Ben was or why it was named after him. The place was a really fun, classic Midwestern scene with traditional activities I had never seen before. A big pumpkin maze, fragrant hayrides, and small, colorful carnival games. The fall scenery in Ohio was mesmerizing. I had a lot of fun playing on the hay bales and sticking my head through the wooden cutouts of pumpkins. The festival atmosphere was so cozy, with the laughter of kids and families everywhere. I remember while I was posing in front of a pumpkin, my mom suddenly stopped and noticed a man. He seemed to be observing the scene with a camera in his hands. He looked like a normal dad standing there, taking pictures of what I thought were kids he knew. But then, I saw him slowly turn towards me, raise his camera, and aim to take a picture. At that moment, as if she had a sixth sense, my mom quickly stepped into the frame to stop the man. I still remember very clearly how my mom approached him and confronted him fiercely. Her voice was so firm. She demanded that he explain why he was taking pictures of me. I was young, so I didn't really understand what was happening, but I could feel the tension between them. My mom asked him to hand over the camera so she could check it. The man tried to make excuses, saying he was only taking pictures of the festival scenery. This confrontation attracted the attention of other guests. They came over to inquire about the situation. My mother immediately told them that this man was committing an unethical and illegal act by secretly taking pictures of me. The news spread quickly, and in a moment, a group of parents gathered around the man, forming a circle. The festive atmosphere suddenly became tense. Luckily, a local police officer was on patrol around the festival area. When he heard the commotion and approached the scene, the officer politely but firmly asked to see the camera. The man tried to refuse, citing his right to privacy, but he couldn't argue with the police officer's request. Plus, the crowd surrounding him was overwhelming. At this point, I started to feel a bit annoyed because I didn't understand what was happening. There were so many activities I wanted to try, and my mom was caught up in this trouble. I saw the police officer take the camera and look at the pictures very carefully. Then his attitude became very angry. Without saying another word, he handcuffed the man and announced the arrest. The crowd quickly dispersed. My mom took my hand and led me toward our car. I remember I was a little disappointed that we had to leave early while the other kids were still having fun. But I didn't make a fuss or whine. It wasn't until 10 years later, when I was 18, that my mother told me the truth behind the story. While waiting at the police station to testify, she was allowed to look through the photos on the man's camera. He had taken many photos of other friends who were at the festival at the same time as me, and the photos were disgustingly enlarged to inappropriate areas. Although my mother didn't describe the specific details, her attitude made me understand the seriousness of the matter. It was truly the most disgusting thing I had ever heard. He couldn't take a picture of me because my mom luckily caught him. To this day, every time I think back, I silently thank my mom for protecting me from something terrible that could have happened. As I grew up and understood more about what happened that day, I realized that moms truly have a special instinct when it comes to protecting their children. They are people that bad guys should never underestimate or mess with. My mom told me something I will never forget. Sometimes, I just have to look to know something is wrong. Thank you, Mom, for being the best. I'm Ethan. I drive deliveries for a Pizza Hut outside Austin, Texas. This job's not my dream or anything, but it pays the rent and covers some bills, so I stick with it and do my best. It was one of those hot summer nights. Even though it was past 10, the air was still heavy, like being stuck in a giant glass box. I'd knocked out most of my deliveries, and had just one pizza left for this quiet residential area. The neighborhood's got these big houses and even bigger bushes, so it's peaceful, but kind of lonely. I pulled up my beat-up delivery truck in front of this small house. The porch light threw a yellowish glow on the walkway leading to the door. Holding the hot pizza, I suddenly felt that annoying bladder pressure kicking in. I told myself to hold it, thinking I'd be home soon anyway, but I couldn't hold it. I realized I had to go right then and there. I started looking around, all anxious. The whole neighborhood was dead quiet, not a single person anywhere. For a second, I thought about knocking on the door and asking to use their bathroom, but I shut that idea down fast. No way I was knocking on a customer's door, especially someone who didn't know me. Just thinking about it made my face heat up with embarrassment. So, I went with the quickest, least noticeable option, find a big bush by the house and, well, handle business. I still felt guilty because it was definitely not the right thing to do, but my body wasn't giving me much of a choice. I made my way to the bush, moving fast and keeping an eye out to make sure no one was around. In my head, I kept telling myself it was no big deal and no one would even notice. But deep down, I couldn't shake off the shame. As I crouched down, I silently apologized to the house and whoever lived there, hoping they'd never find out. Just as I got started, I heard this soft sound, like footsteps, and froze. My heart was racing and my mind was spinning. Did someone see me? I held my breath, didn't dare move, and crouched even lower, pressing myself against the bushes to stay hidden. Through the leaves, the dim light from the street lamp lit up a figure. It was a guy in a dark coat, crouching in the bushes right next to me. My heart nearly stopped when I saw he was holding a shiny knife, a big roll of duct tape, and what looked like a bottle of medicine. I froze completely, feeling cold sweat drip down my back, even though it was still crazy hot outside. I wanted to turn and run, but my legs wouldn't move. Then he looked up, and our eyes met. His stare was cold, empty, and calculating. I held my breath, too scared to move an inch. All the guilt I'd been feeling about being rude vanished, replaced by straight-up fear of what this guy might do. For a second, I thought he was going to charge at me, but he didn't. He just stared at me, and that freaked me out even more, the silence, like he was deciding what to do with me. With whatever courage I had left, I turned and bolted, running as fast as I could. My hands were shaking like crazy as I fumbled to grab my phone and call the police. My voice was all over the place as I told them what happened, where I was, and what I saw. I stood next to my car, keeping my eyes glued to the bushes. My legs wouldn't stop shaking and my head was spinning with a million thoughts. Did I just stumble on some criminal? Or was he just some homeless guy with weird stuff? Waiting for the police felt like it took forever. I barely breathed, just watching him sit there, not moving a muscle. When the police finally showed up, they surrounded him and got him restrained real quick. They took all the stuff he had and started checking it out, so what I saw was real. But the craziest part was when they found a photo in his bag. One of the officers pulled it out, and his whole face changed. He didn't waste any time, just headed straight to the house I was about to deliver to and knocked on the door. The woman who answered was my customer, Haley. Haley let out a scream when she saw the guy getting arrested. She told the police he was Tyler, her ex-boyfriend who'd been stalking and harassing her for months. It was pretty obvious that him being there with a knife and duct tape wasn't just a coincidence. Standing there, I felt this low-key panic bubbling up, not just because of the whole awkward thing I'd been doing earlier, but because I'd somehow gotten mixed up in something so terrifying. At the same time, though, I felt a sense of relief that I'd called the police when I did. If I hadn't stopped by that bush, who knows what could have happened to Haley? I didn't even want to think about it. That night, I drove home with my head all over the place. Every time I thought about it, I felt guilty and thankful at the same time, despite an awkward start. I'm Hannah, and me and my three friends, Alex, Mia, and Jared, had this idea to go camping for the weekend. We picked a remote spot out in the Mojave Desert, close to the Nevada border. Alex found it on some camping forum where people couldn't stop raving about how wild and beautiful it was, especially the night sky. We got there around 4 in the afternoon and decided to set up our tents on this little hill that looked out over a sandy valley. There wasn't a soul around. No lights, just cactus, rocks, and sand stretching out forever. We pitched our tents, made some food, and sat around the fire telling ghost stories and cracking up, just like we always do on these trips. By the time it hit 10 p.m., everyone had had a couple beers and was getting ready to crash. That's when I noticed this tiny light way off in the distance. At first, I thought it was just a shooting star, but then I looked again and realized it was headlights. Out in the middle of this endless desert, any sign of life was a big deal. I pointed it out to the others. Mia grabbed her binoculars from her backpack and checked it out, said it looked like a big truck pulling a trailer. Jared just shrugged and went, "Probably locals or something, no biggie." But something about it felt off. I mean, who drives way out here this late at night? Just as I was about to say something, a bright red light shot up into the sky. It lit up the darkness like fireworks. Alex was like, could be a distress signal or something. We all looked at each other, freaked, but mostly curious. Alex stood up, brushed the sand off his pants, and was like, "Let's go check it out." Honestly, we should have been crawling into our sleeping bags, but instead, we grabbed flashlights, our phones, and Jared's bush knife and headed off toward the light, buzzing with that dumb but thrilling excitement. We hiked for like 20 minutes through some rough ground, scrambling over rocks, dodging cacti. As we got closer to the light, we came across this small campsite, just a couple of military-style tents, a dead fire, and some folding chairs scattered around. But no one was there. Alex picked up a can of soda and said whoever was here must have just left. It was still warm. Mia noticed tire tracks and a bunch of footprints in the sand, all leading off in the same direction. I crouched down and saw something glinting under my flashlight. It was a shiny brass bullet casing. Looked brand new. Mia's voice got tense. She said maybe we should just head back. But right then, another flash lit up the sky, closer this time, and way brighter. That same red glow lit up a trail leading into a narrow canyon. My heart was racing, but I couldn't shake the urge to see what was going on. I told the others we'd just check it out real quick and turn back after. We followed the trail, kept quiet, and even turned off our flashlights so we wouldn't get noticed. The canyon opened up into this small valley, totally boxed in by stone cliffs. And what we saw there, I swear I'll never forget it. In the middle of the valley, around 20 people were standing in a perfect circle around a big fire. They were all wearing these long black cloaks with their hoods up, completely still like statues. Right in the center of the circle, over the fire, was this huge black metal pyramid, probably 4 meters tall. Even from pretty far away, we could hear this deep, steady sound, like some kind of humming. It was weird and haunting. Then out of nowhere, everyone went totally silent. One person stepped into the middle of the circle and faced the pyramid. They were holding a long knife. We couldn't really see what was happening in the circle, but it got real tense. Then suddenly, the person yelled something, like a spell, and the whole valley echoed with it. Mia let out a gasp, totally freaked out, and Jared immediately motioned for us to stay quiet, but it was too late. We could see the faces in the circle now, and every single one of them was staring right at us. Jared shouted, and we all bolted like our lives depended on it. Behind us, we could hear shouting, screams, footsteps, getting closer. My heart was pounding like crazy, my vision tunneling. The ground was rough, and I tripped a couple times, but adrenaline kicked in, and I just kept pushing forward. As we passed the abandoned campsite, a bunch of red flares suddenly shot up from the hills around us. The whole desert lit up in this eerie red glow. Then we heard voices shouting from every direction. Alex froze for a second, realizing there were way more of them than we thought. Mia started crying. We knew we were surrounded. Jared was gripping the knife tight, eyes darting around in a panic, and said that as soon as we got back to the tents, we had to jump in the car and get the hell out of there. So we kept running. All we could hear was our hearts pounding and our own breath, ragged and sharp in the cold air. After probably 15 minutes, we finally saw our camp up ahead. We made a beeline for the car, dove in, and Alex jammed the key into the ignition. But when he turned it, the engine just gave out a loud, hopeless hum, then died. Alex kept trying, turning it over again and again, but nothing. I looked out the window, and that's when I saw red flares all around us, closing in. Figures, slowly walking toward us from every direction. Calm, like they knew we weren't going anywhere. Jared yelled for us to call 911. I started digging around for my phone, but no signal. That's when it hit me. We were out in the middle of nowhere. Mia suddenly pointed up at the sky, catching all of our attention. The moon, just moments ago, big and bright, was slowly turning blood red. It was a lunar eclipse, but right then, it felt like some kind of death omen. Jared yelled that we needed to make a run for the main road, but just as we threw open the door and stepped out, a voice rang out behind us. I turned around, and there he was, the guy with the ceremonial knife. He was only a few steps away. The fire from the pyramid lit up his face. It was cold, bone-chilling. I turned to Alex next to me, and my blood ran cold when I saw the look in his eyes. There wasn't any fear. Instead, this creepy smile started creeping across his face. Alex looked at us and said he was sorry, said this was the only way, that the pyramid needed new energy, and that we'd been chosen. And in that moment, it all made sense. Why he'd been so insistent on this campsite, why he'd acted weird but still agreed to go, why he was so dead set on driving, even though Jared always drove on trips like this. They knew we'd see the flares. They knew we'd follow. It was a setup, and we walked right into it. Then I suddenly remembered I had pepper spray in my backpack. My dad gave it to me before the trip. Just in case, he said. No hesitation. I dove into the back seat, grabbed my backpack, and yanked out the spray. I shouted, "Alex!" He turned, and I blasted him right in the face. He screamed, let go of the wheel, hands flying up to cover his eyes. I didn't stop. I just kept spraying like crazy at the cloaked figures coming toward us, turning the air into this cloud of burning fog. While Alex was still writhing in pain, I grabbed the keys from his hand, shoved him out of the way, and jumped behind the wheel. Jared, without a word, knew exactly what I was about to do. Jared didn't hesitate. He shoved Alex out of the car. I screamed, jammed the key into the ignition, and cranked it hard. The engine roared to life. Turns out the car wasn't broken. It was just Alex messing with us, trying to stall. I slammed the gas pedal down, and the car shot forward straight at the cloaked figures standing in our way. They scattered, diving out of the way, some hitting the dirt hard. In the rearview mirror, I caught a glimpse of Alex, standing frozen in the middle of the desert. His face was twisted in rage, his hands still covering his eyes. The car tore down the dirt road, leaving behind the flares, the firelight, and the screams that faded into the distance. Jared didn't say a word. He was just breathing hard, eyes locked on the road ahead. I didn't say anything either, just kept both hands on the wheel, trying to keep us steady over the bumps and turns. Mia was curled up in the back, still in shock, sobbing without a sound. We finally hit the main road, but I didn't slow down. I just kept driving, straight through the night, until the lights of the first town came into view. After that, we never talked about Alex, or those cloaked figures. It was like we'd all silently agreed that they didn't make it out of that desert. I am Evelyn, 32 years old. A light drizzle was falling on the quiet streets of Portland, streaking water down the car windows. I pulled up my coat collar and hurried toward the office building. April was colder than usual this year, and the gloomy sky made it feel like something was off. The office was buzzing with laughter this morning. Everyone was pulling pranks on each other. Someone had stuck a note on my computer screen. Password changed. Good luck. I didn't even react. April Fools had never really been my thing. A big yellow envelope showed up on my desk, no name on it, but it definitely caught my attention. I opened it. Inside was a plain white sheet of paper with just one sentence. The game has just begun. I glanced around the office, confused. No one even looked my way, like they were all waiting for me to do something. I brushed it off, figuring it was just someone's dumb prank. That night, when I got home, there was a small black gift box sitting right by my door with a crimson ribbon. I picked it up, and a shiver ran down my spine. When I opened it, there was another piece of paper inside. Happy April Fools. I shivered again, and as soon as I folded the paper, I noticed a small photo at the bottom of the box. It was a picture of me from that morning, right after I stepped out of the coffee shop near my office. It was taken from a distance, but it was pretty clear someone had been following me. I carried this weird mix of confusion and discomfort, thinking the whole thing was just some creepy April Fool's joke. That night, a soft scratching sound outside my bedroom window jolted me awake. I sat up, heart racing, telling myself I was just imagining things, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. The next day, I left the office earlier than usual, just wanting to get home and take a break. As soon as I walked into the house and shut the door, there was a knock. I hesitated for a few seconds before opening it, and there was a big box sitting on the ground. Right away, this strong, nasty smell hit me, making me want to puke before I even opened the box. My heart was pounding. I kinda knew what I was imagining, but my curiosity wouldn't let me stop. My hands were shaking as I peeled off the tape, and the second the lid popped open, I instinctively stepped back. Inside was a pile of red, slimy flesh wrapped in some cloth. Pale white patches of skin were mixed with this gross, sticky liquid. Flies buzzed around the edges, and tiny maggots crawled all over the surface. My stomach turned, and I bolted to the bathroom to throw up everything. It took me forever to calm down, but I went back to the box. I had to get rid of that disgusting thing immediately. But then I stopped. There was a small piece of paper on the box, covered in dried blood. Remember me? I didn't remember. My mind was a total mess, completely confused. But someone out there remembered me, clear as day. The cops showed up 10 minutes later. They checked the box, took meat samples for investigation, and searched around the house. 2 days later, the cops found out the meat in the box was bought from a local slaughterhouse. Looking at the cloth that wrapped the meat, it looked a lot like a jacket I used to have. My head was spinning, and I felt like I was losing it from this creepy prank. He had been so close to me. He snuck into my house, and there was a good chance he was still out there somewhere without me even knowing. "Have you had any recent disagreements?" a cop asked me. My mind was all over the place as I tried to dig through my memories. A few faces popped up. A former coworker who had acted out and was pretty hostile toward me before getting fired. Some weird guy I always saw at the coffee shop near my office. Every time I went, he'd be sitting in the corner like he was watching me. Who could be behind this messed up prank? The cops started investigating based on the list of suspects I gave them. They checked the security cameras near the coffee shop and saw that the weird guy had been there a bunch of times when I was there, but there was no proof he ever approached me. When they looked into him, he turned out to be just a regular delivery guy with no criminal record and no connection to what happened. Next up was my ex-coworker who got fired, Mark. After digging into his past, the cops found out he had a record for harassing women. During the interrogation, Mark didn't deny hating me after getting fired, but swore he never planned any revenge. The cops checked Mark's recent calls and activity, but found nothing linking him to what was happening to me. That made them start thinking maybe someone else was behind all this, someone with deeper, more dangerous motives. A week later, I was living with constant anxiety. One afternoon, I got a package in the mail, a USB. I plugged it into my laptop, and there it was, a video of me sleeping, with the camera slowly getting closer and closer. The steady breathing of whoever was holding the camera started blending with the sound of my own breathing while I slept. With every passing second, my body froze up more and more. At the end of the video, the camera turned toward the window, showing the reflection of a tall, familiar figure dressed in black. I held my breath, my hands shaking as I slammed my laptop shut. But before I could even process what was happening, my phone started ringing. It was an unknown number. I hesitated for a few seconds before picking up. "Hey honey, fun little joke, huh?" His voice was deep, filled with amusement. My hand clenched around the phone. I thought of him, but there was no way. He was still supposed to be in jail. "Dominic, how is this even possible? The law only traps the weak. I'm back, and I've got all the time in the world to play with you." Hearing that cold, twisted laugh made every scar on my body sting. All those memories of my personal hell came rushing back. My baby with him ripped away from me by violence just before his due date. I took a deep breath, forcing down the panic rising in my chest. I had to keep him talking long enough. I swallowed hard, my eyes flicking to the corner of my laptop screen, the location tracking system the cops installed 2 days ago. The GPS was updating every second. He was so close. My hand shook as I tapped the table, a signal to the tracking team. Dominic's creepy voice echoed in my ear. "The back window. I've been in there so many times. You have no idea." My heart nearly stopped. I didn't dare turn around. I could feel his eyes on me from somewhere in the darkness. I took a deep breath. The SWAT team was in position. "Dominic, this is the last time." "Happy April, fools," I whispered. A loud bang came from the other end of the line, followed by shouting, the sound of a door being kicked down, and Dominic's panicked screams when he realized he was trapped. I hung up. The location screen flashed one last time before the signal went dead. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. This time, he wasn't coming back. My name's Monica. I'm 22. I love myself, and yeah, I'm confident in my own skin. My friends always say I'm pretty easy on the eyes. I used to live in a rougher neighborhood. But once my parents' business started picking up, we moved into a decent middle-class home. The area was great, quiet, clean, and mostly full of folks who didn't look like us. We stood out, sure, but people were chill. They welcomed us. I've got this habit. I swipe on Tinder more often than I'd like to admit. Most of my friends, I actually met them through the app, and honestly, they turned out to be cool, but I'd never had an actual thing from Tinder. That is, until I matched with Brian. This guy? Drop-dead gorgeous. Tall, built, curly brown hair, piercing blue eyes. The first time we met up, my heart was pounding like crazy. He gave me this once-over, not in a creepy way, more like he was surprised and into it. Then he spoke. Instant jelly. I'd never felt that way about anyone before. We started bumping into each other all the time, not like planned dates, more like weird coincidences. Coffee shops, parks, the gym. Everywhere I went, boom, there he was. One day he casually mentioned we lived in neighboring areas. Thing is, I don't remember telling him where I lived. But honestly, I didn't care. He was hot enough to make me forget everything else. So yeah, we officially had our first real date as a couple. He picked me up like a total gentleman and even came inside to say hi to my parents. They were totally charmed. Couldn't stop smiling at him. Midway through the date, Brian said he forgot something at his place. and asked if I wanted to swing by with him, but the moment we stepped inside, everything just blew up. I was barely through the door when I heard a woman screaming from inside the house, "Intruder! Intruder!" I freaked out and grabbed onto Brian's arm like my life depended on it. Then this woman stormed in from the hallway, furious, wild-eyed. She looked just like Brian, so yeah, I figured it had to be his mom. Just shoved me away from him, pushed me out the door, slammed it in my face. I stood there, totally thrown. Brian rushed out right after trying to calm the situation, but his mom was going off. She started smacking his chest and yelling, "She's not the kind of girl you deserve." Yeah, I got the message loud and clear. I turned away before she could see my eyes welling up. On the drive back, Brian kept apologizing, nonstop. He was scrambling to explain why his mom acted like that, and just kept saying sorry over and over. I knew it wasn't his fault. The date itself was actually great. It's just the whole apology overload kind of made things awkward. When I got home, I didn't tell my parents anything, because honestly, I still really liked him. A lot. After that, Brian and I kept texting, kept meeting up, and the more time we spent together, the closer we got. One day, Brian and I made plans to meet up during my lunch break. Everything was fine until his face suddenly changed after checking a text. "What's wrong?" "It's my mom. She said she just drove by and saw us. She's really pissed." At that point, I wasn't even worried about her. Honestly, I was just annoyed. He's a grown-ass man. Why the hell was she still all up in his business? We shrugged it off and kept sipping our coffee until she actually showed up. Brian's mom walked right in, smiling at me like she was doing it just to mess with me. Then, out of nowhere, she threw something at me. It was in a tied-up bag, but the smell hit me before it even landed. Brian and I looked at each other, both frozen. He jumped up to stop her. I looked down at the bag. It was shit. This woman had just thrown a literal bag of feces at me. I was beyond done. I stood up and walked out, furious. Brian ran after me trying to explain, apologizing like crazy. I ignored everything that day. No calls, no texts, no FaceTime. I was seriously pissed that Brian hadn't set things straight with his mom about us. That evening, when I walked out of the office, her car was parked right next to mine. She got out and told me to stay away from Brian. I told her she should probably have that conversation with her son too. Then I got in my car and drove off, leaving her standing there, staring at me with that same nasty look in her eyes. When I got home, my phone started buzzing with texts. Unknown number, all threats, creepy, specific stuff about me and my family. I didn't respond. I just called Brian, told him everything, and I said we shouldn't see each other anymore. His mom had crossed the line. Brian said he'd talk to her and that he'd wait for me, no matter how long it took. The next morning, I woke up to my mom screaming. My dad and I ran to the porch, and what we saw stopped us cold. 3 dead birds lined up. Next to them, a note with just 3 words. Mom. Dad. Monica. My dad looked at me furious and demanded I tell him what was going on. So I did. I told him everything. My parents called the cops. They went to Brian's place, but his mom denied it all. Worse, she turned around and said I'd been harassing her son. I showed the police my text with Brian, laid it all out. They took notes, logged the threats, and said they'd follow up. That night, the strange number messaged me again. "It's over." I replied, "What do you mean?" These threats didn't scare me. The next day, on my way to work, I noticed a black car parked in front of my office. When I opened the door and stepped out of my car, I heard footsteps running behind me. Suddenly, a strong force grabbed me from behind, covering my mouth so I couldn't scream. The last thing I remember was being thrown into a car. When I woke up, I found myself in a hotel room, still fully dressed, thank God. Brian's mom was standing at the door of the hotel room with 2 of her henchmen. An evil smile was on her face, the woman looking elegant but cruel. I faced her. "Why did you do this?" She screamed, almost insane. "You're not worthy. You ugly duckling. You don't deserve my son and my family. Anger exploded inside me. I straightened up, firm, determined to maintain my confidence and pride. I don't need your approval. I know my worth, and I won't let anyone hurt me. When she lunged at me, I shoved her away and ran toward the door, but her two strong henchmen immediately blocked me. I didn't hesitate. I bit, fought like a wild animal. I used all my strength to break free, and finally I did. I ran out of the room, sprinting down the hallway. My heart was pounding like thunder, and I quickly grabbed my phone to call the police. Just as I ended the call, a wave of dizziness hit me, and I couldn't react in time, and fainted. When I woke up, I found myself in a hospital. My parents were standing next to me, their faces worried, and even Brian was there. He looked at me with regret, constantly apologizing. I couldn't hear anymore. I looked at him, feeling sadness and disappointment. "I can't continue with you," I said, my voice cold and firm. "Thank you for what you've done, but I can't be in a relationship like this." I didn't need to explain further. What I felt, he would never understand. Brian just stood there, silent, saying nothing more. I didn't need any more apologies from him. I knew I had done the right thing. I am Julia, 24 years old, living alone in a small apartment in a quiet suburban area. As someone who lives quite frugally, I often use Craigslist to buy and sell secondhand items. Sometimes, I read the missed connections section, where people write about fleeting moments with someone they missed the chance to connect with. I see it as an interesting way to kill time, reading strange or sometimes funny stories. One evening, while scrolling through missed connections, a post caught my eye. The headline was simple yet bizarre. The girl in the red coat at the supermarket near Elm Street. The post described a brown-haired girl with a ponytail, buying fruits and canned goods, exactly like what I had done that day. I felt a slight chill, but quickly brushed it off. It was probably just a coincidence, and I wasn't the only one with such appearance or habits. A few days later, I needed to buy some more items, so I went back to the familiar supermarket. The atmosphere in the supermarket was as usual, busy but not too crowded. I pushed the shopping cart through the aisles, picking out groceries, but throughout that time, I had the feeling that someone was watching me. When I turned around, I caught the gaze of a man standing a few meters away from me. He was thin, wearing a black hoodie with a pale face, deep-set eyes, and tightly pressed lips. He stood motionless, staring at me intently, as if he wanted to engrave my image into his mind. I pretended not to notice and quickly moved to another area, but every time I looked up, I saw him appearing nearby, always maintaining just enough distance to avoid being too obvious. A sense of fear began to creep in, and I decided to finish my shopping, pushing the cart faster and heading to the checkout. Once I reached the parking lot, the biting cold of the evening made me shiver slightly. As I was putting the bags in the trunk, I saw him again, standing near the exit of the parking lot, his eyes still fixed on me. I hurried into the car, locked the doors, and drove home. In my mind, I tried to reassure myself that he was probably just a strange person, and there was no need to overthink it. That night, as I sat on the bed, I opened Craigslist again, out of habit. This time, a new post appeared in the missed connections section. The headline made my blood run cold. The girl who left the supermarket tonight, driving the silver car. I nearly dropped my phone as I read the content of the post. He described exactly what I was wearing, how I looked around anxiously, and even wrote, "I want to be with you. Just give me a chance." I couldn't believe my eyes. My whole body trembled, not knowing what to do. I thought about calling the police, but with just this evidence, it wouldn't be convincing enough. I decided to reply to the post, asking him to stop and warning that I would call the police if he continued. But deep down, I was worried that doing this might only make things worse. A few days later, everything calmed down. I didn't receive any further responses to my post. I began to think that maybe he had given up, but that peace was only temporary. One night, while watching TV in the living room, my phone vibrated with a new email notification. I opened it and almost dropped my phone. Attached to the email was a photo taken from outside the window, a picture of me sitting on the sofa. My heart was pounding and cold sweat poured over me. I rushed to check all the windows and the front door, making sure they were locked. But before I could do anything else, a loud noise echoed from the living room window. The glass shattered and a hand reached through, forcefully pulling the door open. I screamed in fear, ran to the bedroom, locked the door tightly, and called 911 in a panic. Police sirens echoed not long after. I heard the sound of footsteps running, and then everything became silent. When the police broke down the door, they announced that the intruder had escaped. I sat huddled on the bed, my whole body trembling, tears streaming down my face. The police found a sharp knife and several pieces of paper with scrawled writing left near the window. They were lines expressing his obsession with me. I couldn't stay in that house for another minute. The next day, I packed my things and moved in temporarily with a close friend in another city. But even after leaving that place, the feeling of being watched still haunted me. I always felt like someone was watching me from the shadows. Every time I heard footsteps behind me or saw a car slow down near me, I would jump and turn around, my heart racing. I deleted the Craigslist app and promised myself I would never open it again. This story is not only a warning about the hidden dangers online, but also a haunting that will forever be etched in my mind. I'm not sure I will ever feel safe again, no matter where I am. I worked as a package sorter at the FedEx distribution center in Schertz, Texas for 4 years. That night, the rain had been pouring for 79 continuous hours. The city of Austin, just a few dozen miles away from where I was on high alert. 2 bomb blasts had killed 2 people. The first one cleverly disguised as a package. My shift manager, Jason, directed me to the D3 area, the conveyor belt where packages from Austin were processed. This section usually only received a few returns each night, but tonight, the conveyor was almost blocked, flooded with packages from the city in panic. Most of them had returned to sender, or address not found stamps hastily applied. And then, I touched it. A brown cardboard box, no postage, no barcode, no return label. Just a carefully handwritten church address. I picked it up. It was far too heavy for its size. Then I smelled it. The metallic engine oil-like smell. But there was something else, a sour, nauseating scent that made me gag. I turned the package in my hands, and my heart sank when I saw a small crack in the corner. Behind the cardboard, a red wire peeked out. In that moment, I could hear nothing except my own heartbeat. The hum of machines, the chatter of employees, everything disappeared. It was just me, the box in my hands, and one thought in my mind. Oh God, is this a bomb? Carl, he didn't need to ask. He just glanced at the package and nodded. We understood each other without saying a word. In seconds, the evacuation protocol was activated. 83 people evacuated the warehouse, quickly, but without panic. I stayed frozen, holding the box, sweat pouring down my forehead. If I set it down wrong, if some mechanism inside activated from the impact. I stood there, not daring to move. The box was still in my hands. The bomb squad was on their way. I had 9 minutes to keep it still. The rain continued to fall outside. The warehouse was now nearly empty. Everyone had been evacuated. It was just me, Carl, and a few senior staff members standing far off, watching, waiting. No one dared approach. I tried to keep my breathing steady, but with each passing second, my hands shook more. My wrist ached from being held in place for so long. I swallowed hard, my mouth dry, my heart pounding so loudly I could hear it in my head. 8 minutes. I thought about my wife and daughter. She always told me to be careful. You're just sorting packages, what danger is there? I used to think. But now, standing between life and death, I realize there's no job that's truly safe. My daughter always thought her dad was Superman, the strongest man in the world. 7 minutes. What if I don't make it back? I felt my chest tighten. I didn't want to die. 6 minutes. My fingers went numb and I accidentally slipped one. The box wobbled slightly. Inside, something shifted with inertia. Sweat poured down my face, rolling down my cheeks. I squeezed the box tightly, took a shaky breath, not daring to exhale too forcefully. Carl shouted from afar, "Hold still! Don't move!" 5 minutes. Every nerve in my body seemed ready to snap. I shut my eyes, trying to push the fear away. I thought of my wife and daughter's smiles when they greeted me at home. 4 minutes. I can't die here. I gritted my teeth, clutched the package tightly, trying to keep it absolutely still. 3 minutes. I felt my legs shaking, but I stayed firm. 2 minutes, then 1. The sound of sirens blared. The bomb squad had arrived. They rushed in, instructing me to slowly place the package down. I could barely feel my fingers anymore. I let go. Inch by inch, there was no explosion. One of the bomb technicians performed a sweep with a detection device. He froze for a few seconds, then turned back to look at me with a horrified expression. The tilt switch was triggered, but for some reason it didn't explode. I collapsed, my body going limp, drained of all strength, but I was still alive. The next day, I sat in an office at the FBI headquarters in San Antonio, listening to the analysis of the bomb I had discovered. "You're very lucky," Agent Gomez said. Just one small technical error, a loose wire, had kept me alive. "We traced the package you found. The church address was just a decoy, but through security cameras we identified a person who dropped the package off at a public post office." Gomez placed a photo in front of me. A young man, average build, wearing a gray hoodie, head bowed to avoid the camera. Though the image was unclear, there was one detail that agents couldn't ignore. He was driving a red Ford Ranger, the same vehicle seen near all the previous bombing sites. We traced his vehicle registration numbers and analyzed his purchase history for bomb-making materials from local stores. That's when the name Mark Anthony Condit came up. We followed him for 36 hours. When he realized we had identified him, he fled. By the time he reached Interstate 35, the police surrounded his vehicle, but instead of surrendering, he detonated a bomb in his car. Then, he opened another file. A list of targets, organized by priority. The first target, First Baptist Church, the address on the package. The second target, 1429 Oakwood Lane. I felt my body freeze as my eyes lingered on the second address. 1429 Oakwood Lane. That was my home. My palms tightened so much that my nails nearly dug into my skin. The entire room seemed to fade away. Agent Gomez's voice became muffled, but I could no longer hear him clearly. Everything blurred. Only one thought remained. If I hadn't noticed that package that day, if I hadn't paid attention to that strange smell. On my way home, I watched the streetlights blur past the car window, my body still trembling. I would never tell my wife and daughter about this. They shouldn't live with the fear I just experienced. From now on, every time I handle a package, I'll check it more carefully. Every time I hear a strange sound, I'll be more alert. And every time I get home, I'll hug my wife and daughter a little longer, as if I were granted another life, one I almost lost. I thought it would be just another normal shift. But then, from the back seat of that old car, I saw a small hand pressed against the window. Just a few minutes later, the man drove straight into the gas station to kill me. I'm Sean, 30 years old. I've been working at the Chevron DTC gas station on the outskirts of Denver, Colorado for 2 years now. My night shift starts at 10 p.m. and ends at 6 a.m. the next morning. Last Thursday night started like any other. I was sitting behind the counter, reading a book and sipping my coffee. The clock on the wall showed midnight. Outside, the green neon light of the sign illuminated the empty parking lot. The highway wasn't far, and I could hear cars whizzing by occasionally. A little while later, I heard an engine approaching. A gray car rolled into the station. The car looked pretty old, with paint peeling in many places, and the left headlight seemed a bit dim. The driver was a man in his 40s, with long, thinning brown hair and a thick beard. He parked at pump number 3, got out of the car, and opened the gas cap. What caught my attention was how he kept looking around cautiously. His hand trembled slightly as he held the gas nozzle. I went back to my book. Staring at someone for too long is rude, but I did the opposite of what I thought. After just a few seconds of looking at my book, I looked up at him again. This time, I saw a small movement in the back seat of the car. At first, I thought it was a reflection, but then I saw it more clearly. It was a small hand of a child, pressed against the back window. The hand only appeared for a few seconds before disappearing. It must be a small child with an adult, was my first thought. But the man's attitude made me get up to observe more closely. He was still pumping gas, but he turned back to look into the car, saying something with a sharp tone. The gas pump automatically stopped. The man hung up the nozzle and walked towards the store. He pushed open the glass door and walked toward me with a cold demeanor. "That'll be $30, pump number 3. "Yes, sir." I entered the amount into the register. "Do you have a small child in the car?" His eyes suddenly sharpened. "Why?" "I saw a kid in the back seat. If you need anything for the child, we have candy and sodas." "None of your business. Just ring it up." His reaction wasn't like a normal father who would smile and talk about his child. "Cash or card?" I tried to keep my voice calm. "Cash." He pulled out a wad of crumpled bills from his back pocket. I took the money, deliberately counting slowly. "Is there a problem with the pump?" "I need to check the receipt printer." "No receipt needed. Just give me the change." "Company policy. I have to print a receipt for every transaction." "Hurry up!" I bent down as if fixing the printer, but I was actually pulling my cell phone out of my pocket. I dialed 911 without looking, hoping I hit the right numbers. "Sorry, the printer's jammed. It'll be a few more minutes." The man started to get restless. He glanced out the window towards the car. "No receipt needed. I have to go now." "Just a little longer, sir." I felt the phone in my hand vibrate, a sign the call was connected. I spoke louder than usual. "Chevron DTC gas station in suburban Denver. I suspect a child abduction." The man suddenly realized what I was doing. His face went pale. "You bastard." He reached over the counter to snatch the phone, but I managed to pull back. "The police are coming!" I yelled. He didn't say anything else, turned his back, and ran outside. I heard the car engine start. Through the glass, I saw him jump into the car and hit the gas. But instead of driving straight onto the road, he backed up, then slammed directly into the store. I jumped to the side as the Honda crashed into the glass door. The glass shattered loudly, pieces flying everywhere. The store's alarm blared, then went silent. The front of the car was deep inside the store, knocking over shelves of candy. I lay behind the counter, feeling blood from a few small cuts on my hands. The man yelled from inside the car, "I'll kill you!" But the car's engine had died. He tried to restart it, but the car wouldn't turn over. Police sirens blared in the distance, getting closer and closer. He opened the car door and ran out. I saw him through the gap between the fallen shelves. He ran towards the back of the store, but I knew there was only a dumpster and a high fence back there. He wouldn't be able to get away. 2 police cars pulled up right in front of the store. 4 officers jumped out, guns drawn. "Police! Freeze!" I crawled out from behind the counter, ran outside and yelled, "He went out back!" 2 officers chased after the man. The other two approached the Honda that had crashed into the store. "There's a child in here," an officer called out. Through the shattered window of the car, I saw a boy about 10 years old, his mouth taped shut, in a state of extreme panic. The police carefully opened the car door. "It's okay, kiddo. You're safe now." The other two officers returned, escorting the man who was now handcuffed. He saw me and tried to lunge like a wild animal wanting to tear its prey apart. An ambulance arrived to check on the boy and bandage the cuts on my hand. Crime scene investigators began taking photos and collecting evidence. A male officer approached me. "You did a great job tonight. That boy might not have made it if it weren't for you." The boy was Tyler. He had been missing for 3 days after playing in a park near his home. I looked towards Tyler, who was being attended to by paramedics. Luckily, he wasn't injured. Tyler was still scared, but no longer crying, and his parents were on their way. I felt a shiver, but also a sense of relief that I had done the right thing. 2 hours later, Tyler's parents arrived and took him home. The boy hugged his parents tightly, sobbing. Before leaving, Tyler's parents brought him over to me. "Thank you so much," the boy said, then hugged me. I didn't know what to say, so I hugged Tyler back and gave him a piece of candy. My hands were still trembling from the whole ordeal. It was lucky that I trusted my gut.